Good morning, and welcome to the Town of Surf City Work Session Agenda. It is September 20, 2024 at 9 a.m. And at this time, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I'm going to ask our Pastor Bobby Owings from the Gathering Church to stand up and lead us in our invocation.
Let's pause and give thanks. God, we thank you and praise you for the opportunity we have each day just to enjoy all your blessings. And particularly as we mentioned that, just the blessing of this place that we get to live, this part of your creation that reminds us of you, reminds us of your presence, and indeed reminds us of your blessing. So we thank you this morning, God, as we gather, that we have this opportunity. I pray, God, that you be with the mayor, our council, all the folks in our city as they provide so much for this community and the things that we are able to do here.
Pray, God, your blessing upon them, but your wisdom. Pray, God, that you'd give them guidance. You'd give them strength, God. Just watch over them throughout this session, but watch over them every day. God, we particularly lift up Mark and Trudy and their daughter Caroline this morning as they're returning following surgery. Pray that you'd be with Caroline for healing, be with them for safety as they travel. We give you thanks for all that they give to our community as well. Thank you, God, for this morning and everybody that will participate, God. We just pray that, God, as I generally pray, God, that our will would bend to your will. And we pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And if you will continue standing, and Mayor Pro-Tem Jeremy Shugarts will lead us in our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So at this time, I would like to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. However, we would like to move item number 13 to item number 1. Item 13 is the Human Resources Lifestyle Spending Account. Do I have a motion to do so?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to take number 11 and table that to next workshop if we could, because of the absence of Councilwoman Trudy Solomon. I'd like to be here in discussion of that, if you don't mind. It's dear to her heart, so I'd like to make a motion if we could move that to next month.
I'll second that motion as well. So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
It's just a presentation, right?
Well, there's going to be discussion about it, and Trudy want to be involved in the discussion, so that's why I made the motion. Yeah.
Any further discussion? So I have a motion to move item number 13 to item number 1 and to remove item number 11 from the agenda today. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, so item number 1 is Lydia will come forward with Human Resources and present the Lifestyle Spending Account.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for doing that. We have Employee Appreciation today, and we're going to start working on that as soon as I leave here. So what this is about is I would like to ask for a consensus on opening lifestyle spending accounts as a means of an equitable alternative to town-paid dependent insurance. As we have our approved recruitment and retention strategic plan for 2024. This is under Objective C8, which was to evaluate benefits offered to the town. Action item C8.1, which was to conduct a survey among the employees to see what benefits they preferred and any trade-offs they were willing to make. And action item C8.2, which was to develop a cost analysis for offering family benefits such as health insurance and presenting the findings to the manager and the council. So this is where we are, action item C8.2. We did do a cost analysis on the family insurance and covering the dependents, and it would be $1.9 million in addition to what we are paying to cover all of the family members for our full-time employees. That would be the additional cost over what we pay for our employees as it stands. All of our employees do not have children. All of our employees don't have their families on there. So this also makes some inequities in what the coverage would be. So in going through our analysis and our survey that we also did from the R&R strategic plan, the employees said that they would be interested in a lifestyle spending account. And what a lifestyle spending account is, it is a account that we would set up with the town. It's a taxable account that we could set money in every year. It would be evaluated annually, and it would be fluctuating annually, that would allow employees to purchase things in their lifestyle that they're already doing, such as school supplies, haircuts, wellness. We would set parameters. Those are just really wide things, fitness classes if they're going to gyms and those things. And it will allow them to get reimbursement on those items that then they could use every day. And everybody would have it, whether you had children or a family or it was just you. It would be something in that lifestyle spending account that everyone would be able to use. And how we are wanting to or asking for consensus on funding this, we have negotiated down our insurance renewals. We budgeted 9%. The official first, when Blue Cross Blue Shield came to us, it was at 11%. We negotiated it down to 4% with them. So we have about $152,000 in the insurance line item that could possibly fund this lifestyle spending account for the employees.
All right.
Any questions? This is a very new concept, so I mean, if you have questions or like more specifically, I'll be more than happy to kind of go over the numbers and everything with you.
All right, so is it the $152,000 would just be set aside, the town would set that aside, and an employee that purchased something that qualified for whatever is on the list would be able to bring it to the town and get reimbursed for that funds?
Yes,
What
sir.
what if those funds run out before the fiscal year?
We would set out a specific amount. Like, for instance, right now we have our HRA, which is tied to our insurance. We do $250 a year per employee. That's a set amount. If they don't use it, they lose it. So we would set a very...
By the number of employees, whatever that comes up to be. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
And
and I'm sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, no, go ahead,
please,
sir.
please.
I just wanted, to say that number from year to year could change, and we are not setting it up to be any kind of windfall. It's just this year, because we did budget 9% and we were able to get that we have that there, and we can use this now as a, an alternative that would be equitable to everyone. And, when you're looking at those things and you're having to pay for insurance through individual insurance, if you're having to buy school supplies or shoes or all those things, and then you have this, then that frees up a little bit of money towards those insurance premiums.
This is basically for personal items type of thing, like what kind of, like you say, shoes and school supplies?
Anything from wellness to tangible items, we literally will set up the parameters on it, and it can be used for anything. That's why it's called a lifestyle spending account.
Are we offering insurance to the families as a whole, but then if you don't have family members to go on insurance, you get to use this? Or it's instead of doing insurance for the family, we're going to do this account instead?
Right, so instead of us offering to pay for, example, if it was for your dependent, that's where the 1.9 would come from. It would be additional. So if you had your dependent on our insurance, you would still get the lifestyle spending account.
Okay.
You don't have to have the insurance with us, but this is just an equitable alternative to that.
Okay.
So it's an extra, I mean, like the medical insurance is still going to be there, but this is an extra, that's why it's lifestyle spending account. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any municipalities in our area that use this format?
Carolina Beach has that. It's becoming more popular. This is actually how I heard about the lifestyle spending accounts when I was at the last HR conference we were talking about. And there's lots of ones across the state that are using them, but Carolina Beach is one that's setting theirs up and using theirs.
How would we determine what the budget would be moving forward? I know how you come up with your number this year. How does it move forward?
That's what we would have to discuss, and that's why it could very well be fluctuating from year to year, depending on where we are with our cost of livings, with what the insurance rates were. If the insurance rates were to go up, 15%, we weren't able to get them down, then we may not be able to fund it at all. But by doing this is a benefit that even though it fluctuates, it's there. And we would have potential to always have some sort of funding to it without tying us out for years on this is a set amount.
It sounds good. To begin with, I thought it was a health
No. And
flex plan, but you could still use it for that if you wanted to, couldn't you? Like if I come in and said, hey, I had $60 worth of medical co-pays last week, I want to reimburse.
No, they do advise, that's basically like the only thing that it wouldn't cover. But again, the theory behind it would be that you've paid your copay, you have to come out of your pocket and pay your copays, but this is another pocket you could reach to pay for your tennis shoes.
No, I'm with you. I
Or
understand.
your meals from home, like the home delivery meals, those kinds of things. I mean, it truly is lifestyle spending accounts. We can,
A lifestyle, so let's just talk about lifestyle. If Chief Voorhees decides he's going to go to the bait shop and, he's going to go to the bait shop and he's going to bring his receipts back in for you to, are you paying for vapes?
we can put on the what we will not pay for.
Okay.
I mean, we will definitely, have that, but we can put on there what we will not be paying for.
What if Councilman Shugarts had an outstanding balance at Gilligan's? Allow him to pay that?
So along those lines, if I wanted to take a balloon ride with my family, that wouldn't be covered either, right?
Potentially could be, and
Yeah.
it was things, and this is why we kind of liked it, is that there was, you could,
Mental wellness.
yeah, you could buy a surfboard with it. You could go ski lessons, or again, buy tennis shoes. You may not run a day in your life, but you got brand new tennis shoes. Things that you would have normally considered buying anyway. How can we offset that cost with just a little amount? This isn't, again, not a windfall. And we thought that the structure of looking at the negotiated savings with health insurance based off budget would be a good start with this. And we would still look to try and achieve that every year. But again, we don't know what our financial status would be year over year. And that's my major concern in taking on major costs with family health insurance, is that we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know what the budget next year was going to look like, and that would be a much more drastic take back from an employee than something of this nature. And also, too, I will say that Lydia's done a really good job, Sergeant Peterson, being a representative of the police department and some of our other departments, working with individuals that have families that may not have health coverage, and getting onto the market and negotiating that process and trying to get subsidized health insurance coverage. Because really, when we started talking about all this stuff, one thing I'll never forget, I think the conversation that Chief had brought up was, somebody, if you have an officer out on the road and their family's at home and they're not covered through health insurance, where is their mind at? Their mind is always going to be, I hope nothing happens to my wife. I can't afford something like that. It's just taking their mind off of the duties that they need to fulfill day in and day out. So again, unfortunately, I don't think we are in the position to be able to have a full family-funded health insurance, being able to provide that back to our employees, but not yet. But this is just a little of a stopgap measure that we can look at.
Is there a estimate that you're thinking per employee? Is it a full-time employee gets this, a part-time employee would get this?
It would be only full-time employees.
Full-time employees?
Yes, ma'am. It would be only full-time employees. There is a administrative cost on it, which is $1.90 per employee, and we have 103 on our system right now. So that would be $2,348 a year for the administrative cost for that, for whatever we choose to do.
Are you asking us to choose an amount per employee?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We're just asking that you give us a consensus on allowing us to go further to get down to what the numbers were, because it would require a budget amendment to move it from the insurance line to, we would have to set up a new line called lifestyle spending account on there. So it would be, we would have to do an amendment on that.
And then you'll be bringing that back to us?
Yes, we would be bringing that back to you. And again, with the broad things just like simple haircuts, those, I mean, when we were talking, you get kind of caught up in people who are thinking about all these things that, well, I don't do that, but you do get your haircut. Those things are what we're talking about, these everyday things that everybody does with either individually or with their families.
So we just need a consensus to allow Lydia to move forward in her investigation, and she would bring us back an amendment.
And setting it up. It's a comprehensive process, and it's, lots of people are involved. The wrong committee. Recruitment and Retention Committee has a lot to do with this, and we work very hard together to see what the employees are looking for on that. So we appreciate that.
I mean,
I'm good.
okay, I'm good.
Okay.
Yes,
Cool.
yes.
Thank you,
We
guys.
have-
Have a great day.
we have a
We'll see
consensus. Thank
later
you.
today.
All right, next on our list is the solid waste interlocal agreement, and Kyle Brewer will present.
All right. Good morning, Madam Mayor and fellow council. This is really a first step in an idea in which the fellow managers or my colleagues from North Topsail Beach, and Hawley Ridge have been working on. And a little bit of background, we started discussing this, and 2 of the 4 towns had to do some contract negotiation with their current vendors to extend the contract. So all 4 towns now are generally aligned with our solid waste contract. So what we have found is that there may be an opportunity for us to essentially bid out a service in which all 4 towns require, and take advantage of a bid price that would cover a full contract with all 4 towns. So basically a per unit, we have a volume sort of indicator here to maximize potential savings. So what we're doing is we're putting together an interlocal agreement between all 4 towns that would essentially lay out the process in which we are going to formulate a committee that's going to be made up of the town managers and then a representative from the town. That could be solid waste person, or it could be whoever the town manager wants to appoint to be on there. We would issue a request for proposals utilizing all 4 towns' data and account numbers, and request for bids to come back in based on that single RFP. So if we were able to get competitive bids and potentially negotiate that contract on a per unit basis, each town would still have an individual contract with the service provider. So we would not be at the mercy of other towns. And really where I see it is that the risk then lies with the solid waste service provider. Because if they have bid, they're going to be locked into a dollar amount. And if a town drops out of the contract throughout the performance period of that contractor still has to perform under what they had bid. So that risk then lies with them. So there's certain things that each town does differently, but we have all generally agreed that having both a 96-gallon rollback trash and recycling cart, which is consistent to what we currently have, are very basic necessities. A second trash pickup option that we do during the season would be an absolute necessity, and a bulk item pickup that currently our current contractor does would be a necessity. Again, that bulk item would be negotiated with the contractor of when that's being done per town need, as opposed to everybody just doing it whatever that, time would be. I think we do it twice a year now. So we would continue to maintain the in-house services for veg pickup and rollback services that would still stay with each town, and they would be able to choose however they want to do that. But what we're looking for is general agreement amongst all towns through this ILA to sort of memorialize that process and move forward and try to get that request for proposals out as soon as possible. Because we want to get a contractor in here. And if there is a potential transition of vendors, we have sufficient time between contract award and when our contract expires in May. So that potentially would look like all new carts for all of our customers if there's a new vendor. And there's just a lead time that we have. So we're trying to get on this a little bit early and get things in order. So that's the premise of what we're looking at. The ILA does not commit you to a contract or anything like that. And we have been meeting with vendors here over the last several months and sharing our account numbers, et cetera, because we do feel like with this level of service and being able to provide additional accounts, if there's a vendor out there that needs to ramp up assets for them to complete this and be a viable contender for this contract, they're going to need some time too, getting trucks or people or whatever it might be. So happy to answer any questions. We really think that this is sort of a first and hopefully some evaluation of services within our little area that we can sort of work together on. So
The goal is to try to get the overall cost reduced, right?
Thank you for the question. Yes, that's certainly one of the primary goals. Another goal is to have some consistency amongst all 4 towns of when trash service and recycling services are being provided. Obviously, being a vacation area, the rental companies have to manage 3 separate vendors and what days and times and all that other stuff, plus our homeowners. So we think that this will also provide some consistency there and hopefully efficiency where we don't have trucks on the road, on our streets, on North Topsail Beach, Hawley, Town Street. We don't have trucks running every single day because you have 3 or 4 separate contractors that are doing the job.
And then if we are able to secure a reduced rate, that will reflect in the billing for utilities for?
That would come up for discussion at time of budget.
Anyone else have any further questions for Kyle?
This is probably unrelated to this contract idea, but I've noticed that, the rental houses are here. Okay, so you have, one house might be bigger than the next, but they basically have a trash and a recycling. Is there a way to find out or look into how many garbage cans each house has? Because I think there's a need to have more garbage cans for one house than another. Because,
yeah.
What I see on South Shore when I leave my house and drive down the road on, like a Monday, we have a pickup, there'll be 2 full trash cans and then 6 bags on the street.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's a rental thing for the realty companies or,
So that's a good question. If we see those things, they're getting a citation.
Yeah.
And the way the ordinance is currently written is that if that happens, then you're automatically signed up for another cart.
Okay.
And we have a lot of accounts that have multiple trash carts. Some accounts will have 3 or 4 trash carts, and they're being billed per unit, per trash cart unit. On their bills. So
because some weekends they might not use them, but I mean I think and the long haul for it is X number of house 121 should have 4
yeah
to recycle too, because sometime during the summer they're going to be overflowed.
Yeah, and that's, again, we have a penalty structure in place for it.
Okay.
And when we took over rollback last year, basically our enforcement posture changed from enforcing people not rolling their carts back in a timely manner to now we are enforcing on the front end when trash cart lids are left wide open and then the blackbirds get in there and start picking things away. And then also when people are putting separate bags next to their carts, causing these other bigger issues. Trying to keep our island neat and clean, right?
Sandy Monroe's committee wants to run around and shut garbage can lids. They said they were.
We can find an opportunity for them.
Those are the lids.
Yeah.
Budget you a golf cart.
Yeah.
And a crash helmet.
If there's
So-
no further discussion, you just need a consensus to move forward.
I do, but I'm asking council to have the understanding that we have to still get some language that is agreeable to all 4 towns. So as long as you all are comfortable with Brett and I working with our neighboring jurisdictions and their legal counsel to make sure that the ILA there won't be anything substantial, and if there is, we'll take it back. But we'll probably have to make some very minor modifications. So.
Sounds good to me.
Consensus.
I agree.
All right, we have a consensus on the ILA for solid waste. Item number 2, water sports ordinance, and Kyle will present this as well.
Yeah, so it was, concern was brought to town staff about the potential use of public assets to operate commercial businesses. And to be specific was having motorized water sport rentals utilizing our public boat ramp to be able to launch and retrieve certain things, jet skis or whatever it may be. So what you have before you is a draft of a ordinance that would outline some parameters in which somebody would have to follow if they were looking at motorized watercraft rentals, and that is not utilizing the public boat ramp for that transaction where you're meeting a client or a participant at the public boat ramp. Now, if you need to use public boat ramp to launch and retrieve your vessels, that would be totally fine, but there's a distance parameter there. There's a requirement for education, so we don't get a fly-by-the-night type of vendor putting people out on the water, potentially causing additional harm. There's a spotter requirement that we have in there, and a distance from a public boat access in which you would be able to operate. So really just wanted to kind of get council's feedback and an opinion on this. Again, trying to tailor this to the motorized watercraft, because we do have local businesses, brick and mortar businesses that do rent out paddle boards and other non-motorized type of equipment for our residents and visitors to the island.
Just to add with what Kyle was saying, you'll see in the ordinance, this is all designed for the protection of the citizens, their health, their safety, and the fact that a lot of these folks that are renting may not be familiar with the watercraft that they're renting, and so having that in a public space presents dangers to others, and they may not be familiar with kind of the rules of the road or rules of the waterway. So that's what the ordinance is designed to protect the safety and health of the citizens. A couple things that I think we do need to discuss, Kyle kind of mentioned earlier, is on the violation side, what do we want? Is this going to be a criminal violation? Is this going to be a fine? If it's going to be a fine, what amount of fine do you want? And also on the presentation, we have an educational component, and we left it a little bit blank. Kyle did a great job at drafting the ordinance, but maybe some feedback as to what specifically you're looking for the health and safety enforcement mechanisms, how you want that to look, and we can tailor the ordinance to that effect.
So are we're still working like on this document? You're just asking that we can proceed with T's and I's kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's things in there that, we really wanted feedback from council on, and this is something that we can bring back. It's not, it does not have to be approved in October, especially because we're coming in the off-season, but I'm not trying to delay anything by any means, but this is the first time this board is hearing sort of the concern and a potential ordinance on it. Really, if there's any input or feedback that you all had, then Brett and I can kind of work that back in and bring it back to y'all.
Question. All right. The ordinance will umbrella everybody in Surf City that's renting motorized watercraft.
That's correct.
Not, because there for a second, I was thinking it was just individuals that were using the public boat ramp to meet clients, but the umbrella, the ordinance of the safety and presentations is for everyone, and in part of that is, if you don't have your own local space, you don't get to meet clients at the public ramp and tie this up for commerce. Okay.
That's exactly correct. And, when the concern had come in, we did our investigation with Wildlife Resources Commission and, Marine Fisheries, and, they are not going to enforce that level of transaction, or if somebody's bringing a jet ski or whatever to the boat ramp and renting it to somebody, where they're going to come into play through enforcement is looking at does the provider have the adequate insurance. That was the biggest thing that they have, because if you're renting out a motorized vessel, there's a different type of insurance that someone has to carry.
I can think of two right off the top of my head that rent motorized equipment. Are they involved in this process at all, or have they had any input? Or I don't necessarily mean input, but I mean, they may have ideas about, yeah, man, we're tired of people doing this too. If we did this, this, and this, it may be a benefit.
I believe that's where it started from.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't think also too, and are you finished yet? I don't want to cut you off. I don't think, I don't think I'm as concerned about somebody having a business and coming and renting jet skis as the safety issue that comes from people. Let's say I rent a jet ski from somebody in Sneed's Ferry and they bring it to my marina and drop it off and drop the people off. I mean, you know this, you told me this. Boy, that intercoastal changes from hour to hour. And if you don't have a guide taking you where you need to go, people can be almost, I hate to say, idiots on the water sometimes. I hate to use that word, and I think all of us have experienced a motorized watercraft, a fast little jet ski, cut you off, go behind your boat, go in front of your boat, you know what I'm saying? Or even I've watched them come in through down in the, to go get gas down here, you're sitting at JM's, and it's scary. So I'm hoping that we can, and you were talking about a fine, I think the fine's got to be hefty. Mm-hmm. It cannot be $100. It's got to be super hefty. If there's a violation for this, because they got to if it's $100, you pay the damn fine, you do it again. So it's got to be something that's super hits their pocketbook.
My
can't be just a
reaction on that was, I hear what you're saying, because sometimes it may be, man, and who knows what the scenario is. I would like to see, my knee-jerk reaction was a graduated fine. All right, man, this is a slap on the wrist. I know we talked about it. Maybe we didn't explain it correctly the first time. I need to make sure you understand what it is we want you to do. Yes, I understand. All right, man, you've not done it again. We're gonna ramp it up until you gonna come.
State Patrol Hugh scared me over here. That's what
pulled over.
Is this fine going to be in the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, so
Documented.
let's just say that the person that's the renter or the rentee, if you would know this. If I have the business, I know what the ordinance is. So I know that I am going to be liable for this, and I don't think it should be graduated. I think it should be a punch.
Well, I'm not about
It's the
fines.
business owner that gets fined, not the
the bus-
renter.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's what I
And
mean.
I'm not for fines. Everybody knows that. I always fight anybody getting fines. But when it comes to safety on that water, I'm all about. And I'm okay with a graduated, but the first step should be heavy enough that they get your attention. You don't think about number two. And I also will say this too, and I know you mentioned about the criminal side of things. I really think we should really think about, this needs to be, I mean, serious. Really, it is serious. If somebody kills somebody, how often, before we take action as a
Somebody kills
council?
somebody, that's already criminal now.
Correct.
That's already going to be.
But I want to prevent that.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm just saying, I like to prevent that as much as possible. I like to take action on that before we get to that point.
I think the safety issue too, with not having a place where you have additional watercraft in the water already, so that in the event that they're on something that breaks down, most people on a jet ski or whatever that's a rental are not prepared to throw out an anchor, set what they need to set, or do what they need to do. They're out there just floating. And sometimes it's a parent with a kid that's on a vessel. And if you're now looking at somebody that gets a call that has to load something, get to an already packed dock and ramp, they have no ability to access that quickly. They're not an emergency vehicle. They're just there running a business. So nobody's getting out of their way. And now you've got one or two or whoever just drifting out in the middle of nowhere. There could be storms coming in. There could be all kinds of things. So, like, to me, that's a big part of this and why a certain aspect needs to be.
So one more thing, and to your point is, so after we got our packet and I got back from my little trip, I went and spent some time with Surf City Jet Ski. Wanted to go down there. I wanted to just understand their operations. What do they do to create a safe environment? Well, first of all, they won't let you on the water without sitting and watching a video, right? And then they make people sign those forms that they've watched that video. And then after that is, they send a spotter out with those people, whether they want it or not. And so there's always somebody, there's always a safety net there, always. And I think that's what we're looking for, is that type of an environment for watercrafts.
It's important to have a spotter or some sort of
Not
guide.
watercrafts, water sports. Sorry.
With you, a guide to go with you. And I think they do it for two reasons. One, so to keep an eye on the people, and two, to keep an eye on their equipment, to make sure their equipment isn't taken into an area where it shouldn't be. Because I've had conversation with them, and they tend to keep people away. Like behind where I live, behind my house, there's more oyster beds than there are not. And that's not the place to operate a jet ski, because it's dangerous. So, I mean, to have somebody to go with them, I think it's advantageous for the business as well as the people that are renting those. Because a lot of people come down here, they'll rent a jet ski, it might be the first time they're on one. And, to just get on it, there's enough crazy stuff with boats.
I think everybody brings up really good points, and I think even the potential for environmental destruction, going in places where there's not enough water to draft and you're tearing up seagrass or whatever it might be, is another factor that I believe.
Or you're flipping off the front of the jet ski over the handlebars because you hit
I
something.
just want to say, so like, let's just take onshore George Howard, for example. He rents out kayaks, paddleboards. He is a brick and mortar business. And a lot of those people will rent from him, and he helps them get those paddleboards and kayaks to the park. Is he still allowed to do that?
No, the way that this is going to be crafted is that there's going to be a motorized aspect to it.
Okay.
Because again, the stand-up paddleboard, a foam paddleboard, or whatever it might be, or a kayak is not the piece of equipment that is going to cause the major concerns that we have, where the real health and safety comes into play.
In the event that this passes, once we actually get an ordinance written and in place, are we going to find a process in which to possibly discuss with current registered businesses of Surf City that may fall into this category? This is something that's coming up, to either give them the opportunity to figure out a way to fall within these guidelines, or understand that they're going to have to find somewhere else to operate that style of business.
Yeah, no, I think that if you're operating within the town already, and you're a brick and mortar, then that's, the ordinance probably is not going to really have any effect on you. It's can we potentially comb advertisements of people that are advertising these services and let them know, hey, it's cool that you use a boat ramp, but you've got to meet these people at a dock somewhere. and go through these things, the educational and safety and, the spotter, and hopefully that, that those are things that they want to be able to do for the protection of their own business, I think, and their customers.
I just want one more thing I want to say. So, and this is to your point here on the safety. I have an employee, last month, they decided to buy a jet ski. They said, we don't want to rent it anymore, so they decided to buy it. They bought a jet ski, used jet ski, and they had it out 30 minutes, and it's at the bottom of the intercoastal. Okay, and they didn't get it towed out because they say the cost was like $600 to have it towed out. So it's just sitting on the bottom of our intercoastal. Okay, I think that I don't want that process to be where we have that happening more than not.
Sure.
So, I think that's an unsafe thing, for sure, so.
How do you, the only way I can think of regulating that is, and I don't know how you could verify this, but, if like most people own a boat, I own a boat, I have sea tow, so if I have a problem, I can call sea tow. So is there the same type of thing for jet skis?
Well, a professional company is going to want to retrieve their jet ski.
I just
That's
mean,
what I'm saying.
I just mean an individual. I mean, how do you regulate an individual?
I'm just saying a professional company is going to want to retrieve their watercraft.
I mean, how does the individual know that they need something? So if they have a mechanical
I
failure,
don't think they do, John.
no, I'm just saying, how would you regulate that?
That's a talk for another day,
Yeah.
as far as that goes.
I'm not trying to regulate, I'm just saying. Yeah.
As far as moving forward with the water sports ordinance,
One last thing I'd like to say, I think I hit on it a little bit before. If we're getting ready to put all this rules and regulations on this group of people, I really think they should have some input on, I mean, it still comes as, hey, man, this is what we want to see, this is what's gonna happen. We want safety, we want this, and we want this. They may have a better idea how to implement that.
Sure.
Because they know how they function. I don't think any of us on this board rents watercraft, so let's make sure they have some input on the process.
We can do that, and again, I feel comfortable just because of the timing of it, that, if this does get delayed through October, I think we're okay with some of the imminent concerns. If this is something that council wants to do, we need to have it in before next season, but that would give us time to reach out to our current business owners in town and let them know what's happening. But then again, we know of a couple of places out there that are doing the Facebook advertisement or, yeah. So.
Okay.
Well, I'm in agreement of moving forward.
consensus?
We'll clean some stuff up. We'll talk about the fines and the method of violation, whether that's criminal or civil. Again, if we make it criminal, that brings in some additional necessary resources, and we'll evaluate. Do we need to be sending law enforcement out on Saturdays to go and inspect these things, or Sean, our other code enforcement officer to be sitting at the boat ramp on the weekend? That's not really the route that I want to take, so.
Okay. All right, we have a consensus to move forward with more work on the background of the document that you provided. So, item number 3 is the shellfish lease moratorium, and Kyle is going to present that as well.
Yes, so this comes from recent discussions at our Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission meetings, and this is something that group has taken up, and then we as a town have had discussions about this in the past, and we've had 2 lease public hearings in the last year, and the town has submitted comments, to be put on record, essentially synthesizing language from our comprehensive plan that addresses the compatible uses within Surf City waters. And really what we are seeking is a balance between use of public trust waters, and then of course the ability to grow and harvest shellfish, oysters, etc., because there certainly is an environmental benefit to shellfish and oyster farming, and if they're cleaning our waters, et cetera. So really our stance has been that we want to just see this balance, and all of this is regulated through the state, so we don't really have a whole lot of sort of regulation that we can put on them, nor do I think that we're the entity to do that. So what the commission has done is they want to ask our legislators to consider putting a moratorium for not just Surf City but Pender County waters until some additional regulations can be drafted up to help that balance. And I put in just this little visual that you can have or see is that these are blue. In blue is the bottom leases, which I think that have all kind of determined that those are not the major impacts. You can typically float over those, et cetera. The things in green are the water column leases. These are the newer, quote unquote, newer sort of oyster farming methods. Let me go back real quick. Over the last really 2 or 3 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of lease applications, and some of these are 10 acres of the waterway or tributaries off of it. And just bear with me as I navigate the webpage. This is hosted through Marine Fisheries, but should have an indicator. Well,
I don't think you got into New River yet.
well, this is Surf City, but the leases aren't on. They're not populating for some reason. Must be something on the state's end. But anywho, you had the static images that I had provided, and again, it's something that we've been talking about for the last 2 years, and the culmination is a draft letter in which the mayor would sign to go to each one of our legislators to begin that discussion on the state level.
Do we know if the 2 requested leases were approved?
I do not. I still don't think, and that's another thing, is that the decision-making authority lies with the director of Marine Fisheries, and I don't think that they've even made decisions on the ones from last spring, let alone the ones from the public hearing in Hawley Ridge here recently.
How, in the event that we put this request in, what's the timeline legislative-wise that this would be a change?
Yeah, it would be something that they could take up in the upcoming, in their upcoming long session, so this winter, depending. But another thing that I wanted to mention too is that New Hanover County to our south and I want to say Carteret County to our north both have legislative moratoriums in place, and that's been another concern, is that it's pushing aquaculture farmers to our waters that aren't necessarily local to our area. So you're having farmers come up from Brunswick County or come up from New Hanover County to establish leases in our local waters.
I'd like to say, and I'll pull the guy's name up if anybody wants it, but I spoke a couple weeks ago with the, I think, current director that's in charge of that, and basically the information he provided to me, which was in great detail, I thought he was very good at being able to answer my questions. Every county in the state has a moratorium on column leases. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's their entire county. The only 2 counties in the state that have 0 moratorium is Pender and Onslow County, which goes along to what you're saying. If this is the only place you can do something, this is where you're going to come to try to do it. And they're not necessarily local people. He specifically mentioned that 2 of the larger ones were people out of New Hanover County coming up, and one in Brunswick County was coming up to here. And my question to him was, or one of the questions I asked him was about the Pamlico and Albemarle Sound areas. That's a body of water that you can't see across. And he said there were some areas still allowable there, but that's the guys from Brunswick County or whoever wants, they're not gonna drive that far, and I understand that. But if there's a reason, my theory is if there's a reason why all these moratoriums are in place elsewhere, whether it's because there's environmental concerns or scientific concerns of some other kind, or just overpopulation of some kind, I'm kind of in line with what the Shore Committee said. Let's hit the pause button a few minutes, figure out whatever kind of research we need to determine to decide if this is something we need to move forward or something we need to hold off on.
And those state agencies are much better equipped. They have processes in place and their own rule-making ability to try and harmonize, I think. That's why, I don't think it's really in the town's purview to say you can have X amount of leases per acre. That there's so much more that goes into this. I think building off of that, it's something that we had in our legislative priorities last year was asking the General Assembly to modify some of these rules, make it a little bit more balanced in this approach, because it's causing conflicts here at the local level, and I think they have the ability to try and hash that out on their level.
This is gonna go to all the municipalities, like towns and government, like county government, and we all have to sign off on it together, or
No,
we each do it on our own?
Each member of TISPC committed to presenting it back to their boards. So if a jurisdiction does not want to do it, they don't have to do it. And each jurisdiction may tailor that letter a little differently. I'm the one who wrote the letter for everybody, so what we have is probably what we'll send in, and we'll just send it to our legislators, representative and senators.
Being this is in the waterway, like our town doesn't have a dog in the fight as far as what, we have no control over who is going to operate an oyster farm. In other words, see, my concern is that, when you have local businesses here in town operating their business, just like we've got the boat rental people and we've got the people that sell fishing equipment, the money they generate is in this town and it stays here. So if you have somebody coming from Brunswick County and they come down here to set up an oyster farm, they're taking that product and they're taking it back to where they go, and that's where the money goes. That's where their tax dollars go. That's where their profit goes. So, but there's no way of setting up a borderline to say, okay, well, if you have a Surf City business or your Topsail Island business, you can operate off this waterway.
Yeah, I think, and again, I don't want to get too far out in front of my feet here. Being some of these industries regulated by the state, their rules and regulations a lot of times are going to preempt local authority to be able to do those things. So when the authority to issue a license to do an oyster farm is issued by a state agency, it's hard for us to come back in. We have other things like ALE licenses and permits that, if there's an ALE license that gets issued by the state, that sort of preempts our ability to do a lot of stuff with it. So, but something tells me, we'll continue the conversations, and I'm just not quite sure where this goes. And I think that the town's position has remained consistent and documented in our adopted plan is that we just want all we're seeking is the balance of the public trust water and the people who are trying to make a living by farming within our waters. So, this is the seemingly a first step, because we've tried to provide the outreach. We've provided the public comment during the public hearing process, and I don't want to say because of nobody's being negligent, but we just really haven't had any responses from the state.
I think what you said is put it on the pause button. I think that's a worthwhile idea until we look into it further. But
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a consensus to move forward with this shellfish lease moratorium?
yes.
Yes, yes.
And again, this, just process-wise, I'll work with Madam Mayor to get the letter finalized and ask for her signature, and we'll get it sent up to the state. This won't come back to you for any additional approvals, so.
Next item is the American Tower lease.
Okay.
Again, Kyle was just taking the show today.
I'm about to hand it off here in a second. So the town owns land out at our, essentially our wastewater treatment facility location near Sarge Martin. We have a small parcel that we own, but part of our ownership, the town back in 2005 leased this area to American Tower for the purpose of constructing a communications tower. It's 180 feet. It's been there since that agreement was put into place. This kind of give you a little bit of background. We were constantly in communication with Verizon Wireless because they sort of look after some public safety things, and they came and met with the town, met with all of the towns and the counties here in Surf City, and we're always talking about lack of coverage and how we need to bolster that, and we continue to try and seek opportunities. Understand that we don't necessarily want to put a cell tower on the beach. They always hound me about these oceanfront properties and trying to put a tower on them. I would never bring that to you. But I started asking the questions, hey, we have a tower here, why can't we get some additional service, et cetera. So started talking to one of the Verizon engineers, and he kind of shed some light that, hey, we don't have anything on that tower. We have moved our assets to a different tower in Hawley Ridge, which is just literally a few hundred feet down the street. So American Tower then has contacted me, and they want to renegotiate the lease that is in place, and it's essentially a 50-year term lease where they control the renewals and terminations of that. So since 2019, this tower, in which is put on our land, has not had a carrier on it. So that's now 5 years. So they're trying to reduce their financial liability back to the town on their monthly rate. The way that the deal is structured right now is that they pay us X amount of dollars per month, which is fairly minimal in the grand scheme of things, and we have a 20% revenue share with the carrier. Well, when we don't have a carrier, we're not seeking that revenue share. So I have looked at this, negotiated the per month rate to go a little bit higher, plus a contract settlement of about $6,000, and then also a carrier percentage cost share, revenue share back to the town at 25% as opposed to 20%. So even though we, according to this rate structure, would in the full term would be losing money, we wouldn't realize the full revenue in which the current lease is under. The alternative to it, and this is where my reasoning is that if we do not renegotiate the lease, there's a potential for American Tower to say, we're just going to remove our asset and we're going to terminate the lease, and that full lease term would not be realized, and that can be $300 and some thousand in the renegotiated and $500 and some thousand in the current. So I look at kind of the risk reward in this, and I feel like having the one-time payment at lease renegotiation, and then hopefully advocating for a carrier to come on and having a higher revenue share, hopefully will in the long term be more beneficial to the town, as opposed to them having this immediate reaction, removing the tower, and our revenue that we can potentially project out 50 years would not be realized. The other side of this, and we're still waiting on American Tower to get back to us, is that we may be able to use the tower for some communications assets through emergency management, and if the tower can handle the equipment that James has identified to put on there, then it would be my intention to negotiate the placement of that equipment at no cost to the town as part of this deal. So that's kind of where we're at with it. I hate to bring anything to you that looks like we're losing money, but I felt like the risk was not as high, and this was something that we would be able to do.
When would the renegotiated pricing structure take place?
It would start in March.
Okay. So does that affect the budget at all that we currently have in place, or not so much?
No.
Okay.
Again, the monthly, all we've been receiving is the monthly rental, and it's not going to affect, I think we've been putting it back in our utilities account because it's out at our wastewater treatment plant, isn't going to have an impact on what they're doing.
Okay, you're just looking for a consensus here?
Yes, and as long as council is okay for me to continue to negotiate with them, I'm still going to try to get as much dollar as I possibly can, plus the emergency management. If anything changes, I will bring it back to this board. But if things remain consistent and I can get what I think that the town should get out of it, then I will just move forward in negotiating and executing that lease.
I'm good with it.
All right, we got a consensus on item number 4. Item number 5 is the strategic plan that we have been working on for quite some time.
Oh, man, this one is, thank you for your patience, and again, it was never my intention to take this long to get it to you, but understand that this has been provided to you. We discussed a lot of this at our retreat, and the input that you provided. All I'm simply asking today is for you to take until the next meeting, look over it. If you have questions, come and talk to me about it. Let's set up some time to discuss, and we'll bring it back for the October work session. And if everybody is good to go at that point, we'll get it adopted. And then, as I mentioned to you all, it is certainly my intention to bring this up at our retreat again, as we will do every year from here on out until eternity, to make adjustments, because our strategic plan can change. But this provides us at least a basic framework for the efforts and the programs and the work that we are trying to accomplish as a town, and tries to keep us on the straight and narrow if we possibly can. And it also provides some transparency to the public, in what the town is doing, what the town is investing in, et cetera. So that's where we're at with the strategic plan for the town.
So we will continue to review that over the next 30 days and discuss it at a later date.
Yes, that's
Okay.
what I'm asking.
All right, I think everybody is good with that?
Yep, certainly.
All right, item number 6, annexation petition by Jackson, Hardison, Batts,
This one's Carla.
and, oh yeah, Carla's gonna do this.
Get a turn. This is it's 2 parcels that are together on J.H. Batts Road. We got a petition to annex in an area where we do have a lot of property already. This is about 29.5 acres, and this would be to approve the resolution for the clerk to investigate further and bring it back to you.
This property is, if you go down J.H. Batts Road, it is on your left, very close to where our park is.
Just past that now boy loop,
Yes.
mobile home.
Yes,
It's on the opposite side of the street, correct?
yes. It was on the same side as Now Boys Loop. Currently, the
right.
property is owned by Alvin Batts
Batts
and
right
Robin
now.
Lanier. So do we have a consensus for Carla to investigate annexation?
Yes.
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 Thank you, Carla. Item number 7, zoning ordinance revision, and Amy will come up.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Amy.
So, y'all have heard me talk about the zoning ordinance once or twice over the past year or two. We started talking about it when we started the comprehensive land use plan update a couple of years ago. So we've known this is coming. So today, I'm just going to give kind of a brief presentation about what the changes are, if I could get into my computer. and kind of where we're at. And then at the meeting on October 1st, we will have our public hearing, which is required anytime we update a zoning ordinance or a zoning map. Jason, can you share my screen, please? Thank you, sir. All right. Oh, wrong one. I'm skipping ahead and going to the next one. Planning.
Appreciated today, I think.
Kind of hungry. I'm looking forward to lunch. All right, so the Town of Surf City Land Use Code is what we're here to talk about today. So currently, the Town of Surf City Land Use Code consists of appendixes A, B, and C of your ordinance. Kind of the history or the timeline of this process, we contracted with Withers and Ravenel back in July of 2023. And then very shortly after that, the consultant met with staff to discuss the current ordinances and needed updates. So we kind of went through, redlined what we thought needed to be changed and addressed in our ordinances and provided that to them. During that process, the consultant also reviewed all of our adopted plans, our comprehensive land use plan, our bike and ped plan, our parks master plan. We kind of worked with the sewer master plan, so looked at all of our plans to make sure that they were being incorporated in this ordinance update. So between July 23rd and December 14th, we had our first draft created. So on December 14th, staff and our consultant sat down with our steering committee, which is the planning board, had our first meeting where we presented, this is what we've done so far. Let us know what you think, give us your feedback, and we'll, work through that. In March 14th, we had our second steering committee where we said, hey, we think we're pretty good. How do you feel about that? And then on May 30th, we sat down with town council and said, planning board feels pretty comfortable with what we've done so far. We would love for y'all to give it a look and make sure that we're going in the right direction before we finalize this and bring it to you. And during this whole past year, we have had bi-weekly meetings between staff and the consultant where, anytime they had questions, they would come to me and we would talk through things. So kind of what are the land use code chapter updates? So we had 14 chapters in the original appendix A, which was the zoning portion of the ordinance. We have condensed that down to 10 now, and where it says attachments, 10 is actually wireless telecommunications, which we'll talk about later. But we've condensed it down to those 10 chapters. Part of that was just realigning stuff. Our general provisions and administration seem to be peppered throughout the chapters. So instead of having chapter 8 and chapter 14, we combined that into one administrative place, really so that things flowed better and it made sense when you read through it and you weren't having to jump around so much in the ordinance to find what you actually needed. So just a little bit more coherent product. The other thing that we looked at was changing some of the zoning district names. So there aren't significant changes to the land use code or for the zoning districts. However, we did change the name. So we had talked about like C1 and C3. Why do we have C1 and C3? So we kind of went with Island Town Center and then Gateway Commercial because both of their commercial districts are very different between the island and the mainland. However, they're equally important. So we kind of changed some of those names around, and we will be adopting that revised zoning map as a part of this. Just to show you some things that we didn't have previously and we have now. So on the left, you have kind of for different things that we require, what's required on that. So if you have a sketch plan, or if you have a site plan, or if you have as-built, it now clearly lists everything that you need on there in a table where you're not trying to read through the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance to try to figure that out. So we now have that clear list for all of the different things that we need. We also, you'll see on the right side of the screen, kind of the process. So when people come in and they want to know what is the process of getting this rezoned or what is the process of getting this site plan approved, it goes through and tells you what all of the steps are. Now, obviously, this isn't telling you how long this is going to take because that's going to depend on what you submit to us and what we say back about what you've submitted to us. So there's back and forth in there, but this at least gives you a quick timeline and okay, I've got to make this agenda deadline, and if I make this agenda deadline, then I can move to this agenda and then this agenda, or I don't have to go to any agendas because it's a staff level approval. So we have a lot more graphics in there. Some of those graphics include, like, we say your rear setback is this, or your side yard setback is this, or whatever. We didn't have good representation of those. So you will see a lot of new graphics in there showing you, like, what do we mean. Before we said, like, for buffer type B as an example, I grabbed to put in here, we just said it has to have trees in it, but we really didn't show how that layout should be or how many you should have within the width. It was kind of, it's why we have a lot of single rows of things here, because we didn't have any of that. So now we're kind of showing that we don't want a single row of bushes. We would like it to be a little bit prettier. So that's kind of what that's showing. And then signs are always a lot of fun to deal with. So we went through, and this one just shows 2, but there's about 8, I think, in there. But it clearly shows what the sign is. So it's not just a definition anymore. It's a clear graphic to show, this is what I mean when I say this, and this is how we're going to measure it. And this is the part of the sign that counts as the sign, and this is the part that counts as the structure, because there's different measurements. So really trying to clean up a lot of the gray in our ordinance and make it where you don't have to call me every time you need to know how to do something. You could just read it because it's clear now. So that was a big thing in here. So some of our major updates, other than cleaning it up and making it much more clear and comprehensive, we added Chapter 6, which is our environmental regulations. So we added some tree protection off island. We only had tree protection on island. We added the silt fence requirements. If you do not meet the threshold for the sediment erosion control, we discuss in here areas of environmental importance. So when you're subdividing a lot, and it says it has to have a minimum of 5,000 square feet, that 5,000 square feet would have to be usable land. It can't be 10 square feet that we can barely fit our little house on, and then an acre of wetlands. So it's gonna, that is the only real change, is that we are looking at some of those environmental areas and not allowing them to count towards lot size. That was something that was discussed significantly with council during the comprehensive land use plan portion of not giving credit, I guess, for those areas and trying to be a little more protective of them. We also worked really hard on removing the special use permit. As y'all know, the special use permit is a quasi-judicial hearing where they can bring in experts and say their things, and we may or may not really have an expert to say, oh, we don't agree with that or whatnot. So one of the things that we did in areas that we had special use permits, if we could do permitted with standards, we changed it to permitted with standards. So in your table, you're going to see permitted. So if it says permitted, you just follow the ordinance. It's a by right use. Go forth and prosper. If it says permitted with standards, we're going to add extra standards. And some of those standards are going to be like extra screening. If you're doing, storage or something like that, we're going to want extra screening so that you can't see it by the road. But those were the things that we were typically wanting out of those special use permits anyway, and we knew what direction we were going, so we changed it to permitted with standards. We also included a floating industrial district, so we haven't made anything in the town of Surf City an industrial district. However, if there's something on the edge of Surf City that we feel would be a good use, then we have the ability to have this floating industrial district, which would be done by conditional district. And then we also have a few uses that you would need a conditional district for, so that we kind of know what we're getting into. If we agree that you can put this thing here, we know how you're doing it, and we're not just giving you a blank check, as we like to say. Again, there's an overall reorganization. There's additional charts and graphics. We are also now including a traffic impact analysis requirement. That comes up at a lot of our projects. Our threshold will be lower than the NCDOT threshold, which will help in the congested areas that we're in. And then we will be repealing Chapter 5-6.2, which is telecommunications, and we will place that in the zoning ordinance as Chapter 10 of Appendix A. So the only two things that we have recently discussed and are currently updating in the packet is the dwelling units and a secondary access. Previously, the fire fire ordinances required a secondary access at 30 homes. That was changed in legislative regulations and will change to 100 in the fire code officially on January 1st. However, it is being enforced currently based on the legislative law. Staff is requesting that we put the 30 dwelling units in there because we feel that 100 units without a secondary access creates safety concerns as well as traffic concerns, especially with the congestion that we currently have in the town. And then we did have a question regarding dry stack storage, which was discussed at the planning board. The proposed ordinance currently says that it can be 40 feet high, and anything in excess of that could apply for a rezoning permit. And the discussion and planning board felt that changing to the 48-foot max, which is their current maximum everywhere, would be the way to go. Not to limit it to 40, but allow it to be 48 foot like all the other buildings. However, we did have in there, which came from our current ordinance, that you could request a special use permit to obtain a height of 60 feet in the urban waterfront district. It was discussed at planning board that planning board did not want to continue with that 60-foot allowance that would only be on the Kama urban waterfront. So the Kama urban waterfront runs basically from the OPD around to East Coast Sports. So it would be properties that are touching that would be where that 60-foot. So they are recommending to remove that language and to change it to 48 feet. And then moving forward, we will have the public hearing at the October 1st meeting, as long as y'all are good with moving it forward. I do want to thank council because y'all have all read it, come and asked me questions, given me direction, and been a big part of this moving forward. So I thank y'all for all the time that y'all have put into this because it's a lot of reading. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So the max on the urban waterfront, 48 would be the max now?
Yes, ma'am.
And they would have to get that by special use permit?
48 would be the straight max.
Just straight max.
You could do 48 feet just like anywhere else.
The current dry stack that is there now is, you know what that is?
Over 48.
It's over 48.
Else it's in that area that you described from the OPD to, where'd you say, East Coast? Is there anything in that currently that's over 48?
I would have to go back and verify. Your tallest buildings are going to be East Coast Sports and the PD would be our tallest buildings. There was a special use permit for extended height where the Blue Water Restaurant is. However, they changed the site plan and have done away with that special use permit, so there will not be additional height there.
What's the height of the dry stack that's there now?
I think it's 60 feet. I am not 100% sure on that, but I'm almost positive that the special use permit was for 60 feet, so I would assume it was 60 feet. I have not measured it.
Would it have to be measured, or would that be on file somewhere? You just have to dig up the information?
I would like to say that it was on file somewhere. However, in September of 2018, it rained on the planning files significantly. If I have it, I am happy to look for it. However, it may have gotten rained on.
Well, I'm sure we got some kind of laser device that can measure that, right?
I'm almost certain it's 60. I am almost certain that it's 60 foot. The original, or one of the original plans for that area had a hotel and restaurants and all of that, and all of it was close to 60 foot. And the special use permit was granted. However, that special use permit has expired.
So we're doing away with the 60-foot.
That is planning board's recommendation, yes, sir.
The other development that is, so you got the restaurant that has plans to go in, and there were some other townhomes that were planning to go in. Does that affect them too?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
And they also have approved site plans, so they would go under their approved permitting.
Looking back at the ordinance, so there are contractors right now that have purchased properties for maybe last year. And they may be on the sewer wait list.
If you're on the sewer wait list, you have an approved site plan and you are approved. If you purchase property and you have not submitted anything to me, then you are not approved and you would fall under the new zoning ordinances. But anybody that has a plan and has submitted would be under their approved plan.
Yeah. As far as like, let's just say there's a lot on South Topsail Drive that is a duplex lot. Right now, it is a duplex lot. No ifs, ands, buts about it. It's a duplex lot. However, they're on the sewer wait list for one side of it. Okay? So you might have a home. You might have,
So the lot is able to be, so where, the only place that matters is whether or not you're creating new lots. So it can be a duplex, whether or not you can subdivide it would be where it would come into play. Because taking into account the environmental areas is with the subdivision of new lots. So if it's an existing lot and you can fit your house on it outside of those environmental areas, that's fine. If you can fit the duplex and it allows a duplex, the only thing is whether or not you would be able to subdivide it in the future.
So there's the people that have purchased, just to say, within the last 6 months, and they haven't started building yet. They bought it under the pretense that it was a duplex lot.
It is still a duplex lot.
It's still a duplex lot.
It just may not be subdividable.
Sewer wait list. And so are they going to be becoming a non-conforming lot?
I would have to talk to David Price about that because the sewer wait list, I don't deal with single-family homes on them. Everything that I've dealt with on his wait list has been things that have an approved site plan and been of a more commercial level, apartments, subdivision, things that are much larger. So we would have to clarify with him. But anything that has not submitted that does not have an active permit would follow the new ordinances.
Are you going to, will there be something posted saying if you're going to build and you bought under the pretense of it, that it was a duplex lot, you need to submit your plan ASAP?
No, ma'am. There's changes throughout the ordinances. We have been talking about these coming for 2 to 3 years. I've talked to a lot of people who have called and asked me those questions. We have posted the ordinance online. The public hearing is their chance to come in and talk about that if they are concerned about it.
So we do it.
We'll do a public
We're
hearing.
talking about duplex lots. Is it because?
Well, we were just talking about the entire ordinance itself, so I just wanted to make sure I had clarity on that one issue.
No, I'm with you. So are we, duplex lots will still be duplex lots?
You can still build, if you can fit the duplex on it and it says it can be a duplex lot, then you can still do it. Where the the environmental area comes in is when you are creating a new lot. So that new lot says that it has to be 4,250 square feet minus the areas that are listed as environmentally important. So wetlands, I think like the beach itself, areas that can't really be used. So I have an 8,500 square foot lot and I want to cut it in half. Each lot would now have to have 4,250 square feet, be 25 foot wide, and not include the wetlands in that. Yes, you can build a duplex. It's just whether or not you can subdivide it. We have a couple of we'll use accolades, for example, on this. The lots that are on the sound front do not have 5,000 square foot of upland. However, they may be 10, 15, 20,000 square foot of property based on their map. So those lots would not have been able to get as many lots on the waterfront because they would have had to have actual area in it.
We switch from height
Yeah,
to
I know, yeah.
duplex.
That's me too.
That happens to me sometimes.
Is everybody good with the 48 feet?
Yes.
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 I think so. I mean, I heard him talk about it at the planning board, but I hadn't really.
It's just the one section that we're really referring to that could even potentially go higher than that.
Yes, the one,
moving forward.
the one section, out of the whole island, one very small portion was allowed to request a special use permit to go up to 60 foot, and we would be removing that so that the whole island is now
48.
under the 48 feet
Yeah.
height requirement.
I'm good
And
with
there's
that.
not, I mean, you've got your proposed sites for where they're putting the restaurants and the additional townhomes, and then really the only buildable space in there is between the clubhouse for the marina and the boat rentals and everything else right there. I'm still gonna call it mainsail, because that's all it's ever gonna be to me, but the mainsail building that's there.
I know where
So
you
you just
mean.
have that spot right there in the middle that you could have maybe potentially put something that was 60 feet tall.
Unless we redevelop.
Yeah.
Now, if anything goes away and redevelops, like the Hardee's has closed.
Yeah. So then you also look at, would we ever want to put something over 48 feet in that little tiny space? I mean, you got residential in there too, so you're going to take somebody's view of the marsh away if you let them build that high too, which is not nice.
What would be the height,
48.
the max height like at the IGA?
48 feet,
And they couldn't get a special use to go any higher?
no ma'am.
Okay.
Only if you are touching the water. So IGA, anything on the ocean front, when the old bank and that whole block redevelops, they could only be 48 feet.
Let me ask you,
I apologize, I'm sure this is, are we already at 48?
48 is their current number.
We're not increasing
No,
the
sir.
height number, we're just agreeing, before it was on that waterfront, it was 40 feet with the potential to go into 60 feet.
Before, it was 48 feet with the potential to go 60. The new ordinance had limited dry stacks specifically to 40. So now we're saying that dry stacks can be as tall as anything else, but nobody can be taller than 48 feet unless you're already taller than. So nothing new could be taller than 48 feet.
I have a question. Okay, so right now, presently, the dry stacks that are there are 60 feet high.
Yes, sir, I believe
about.
so.
Okay, is that grandfathered to them? So let's say some devastating thing happened with those dry stacks get wiped out, the owner of that property could rebuild at 60 feet?
Within a certain amount of time. So if if it got, hurricane took it out,
Yeah.
and they were able to build back, there is a certain amount of time that they can build back in.
Would he have to build back dry stacks, or could he build a hotel there?
No, it'd have to be dry stacks.
John, my,
Hotel, but it would fall under current standards.
well, my understanding is, too, is that those dry stacks, though it operates as the Surf City Marina, each of those little slips are individually owned like a condo, so it would be, it's not like Surf City Marina can say, you know what, this was good working, but we don't like it, we're gonna build a hotel, because each one of those little, it operates like a condo.
I just want to make sure that there wasn't a grandfathered thing in to build anything there.
No, I'm with you, I understand
No, they
completely.
could only
Just
put back
to-
the thing that they had
Yeah. Okay.
before.
Okay.
Typically within 6 months
Which, you know,
timeframe.
yeah, okay.
I just know that Mr. Hopkins, I think, is one of the owners of all the property that backs up to the wet slips around Hardee's and Xanadu up to the dry stacks now. He is currently working on a plan that shows 60 feet. How long, I mean, if he were to turn in his plan like next week?
He turned it in prior to 4:30 on October 1st. I don't know where I'm going to be at on the agenda, but prior to 4:30 on October 1st, then he would be under the current ordinance.
All right, do we have a consensus, or what do you,
But he would still have to get a special use permit.
Yes. He would still have to renew his special use permit, and
Apply for a special use permit, not just turn in a
Yes.
plan, but he had to apply for the special use permit.
would get the special use permit either. But he would have the option because it has expired.
okay. Does anyone have any further questions for Amy? Do we have a consensus to move forward?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. All right, Amy, moving on to item number 8, the flood map presentation.
This is another one I feel like we've been talking about forever, is the FEMA flood rate map. I've given you a presentation on this before, so some of this you may remember. So the flood map is the official FEMA-generated flood map that shows a community's different flood hazard areas. It's used by the National Flood Insurance Program for floodplain management, mitigation, and insurance purposes. It defines the flood zones and the base flood elevation. So the current firm effective date for Surf City is February 16th of 2007. The North Carolina Department of Public Safety provided us notification on September 2nd of 2014 that they would be updating our map. So you've been talking about this for 10 years now. Internal meetings began, according to our records, on September 26, 2014, with public meetings held in 2015. So in the first round of appeals, the town worked with individuals throughout the town. The town submitted some were submitted on behalf of people. All of that was reviewed, and in November of 2018, FEMA provided the town with a letter stating the preliminary information would be provided to start our 90-day review process, and then nothing happened. And then on May 11th of 2023, the town received another letter stating that the appeal process would be advertised on May 18th and 23rd of 2023, and that did happen. Town staff held an open house on June 29th, 2023 from 4 to 6 p.m. here at Council Chambers. The town did not submit any additional appeals. However, a few additional appeals were submitted by area residents. On July 17th, 2024, the town received notification that all appeals had been reviewed and changes made to the preliminary map, and that the maps, the FIS, and the firm will become effective on January 17th, 2024. The town has 6 months to adopt the final maps to remain qualified for participation into the National Flood Insurance Program, which is why I'm here today. Staff has revised Chapter 8 of our flood damage prevention coastal regulation phase of the town ordinances to reflect the needed changes. The biggest changes that are in there are the LIMWA definition and the LIMWA area, which I'll show you on the map in just a minute. And the LIMWA definition relates to the coastal A zone in the building code. So it's called two different things, but the requirements become the same. The regulatory flood protective elevation is changing for us from base flood elevation to 2 feet. The 2 foot gets us one step closer to getting our CRS score. So that ordinance needed to be changed as a part of that. And then flood openings. So currently flood openings are required in AE zones. They are not required in V zones, or they're required in all A zones. They are not required in B zones. Breakaway walls are required in V zones. However, you will now have to have breakaway walls and flood vents in V and VE. We also elevated buried tanks. So your propane tank will now either have to be up with your air conditioner basically, or buried underground. He can't just be sitting out waiting to float away during a storm. So then on our next step will be on October 1st, hopefully, 2024, we will adopt the revised ordinances and flood map. The FRIZ link, I know y'all have heard me talk about it quite a few times. So FRIZ is where you go to see what your flood zone is. We are going to go to the old town hall. For from now until January 17th, if you want to see what you are going to, you are still going to have to change to preliminary. You will not look at the effective map until then. Let's see if it's up over here. All right, we're not going to town hall because that one's not working. So basically the LIMWA area, which is part of what I wanted to show you, is the limited wave action area. So it is not, so our V and VE zones are where the wave action is expected. So oceanfront and some other areas in town. The LIMWA is kind of on the very back side of that. I did not choose the Limois. The powers that be above me did. But as you can, so right now, I'm looking at the town of Surf City. Here's the bridge. You can see our flood zones, and we do not have a Limois on the preliminary. You're going to see this new area here, and this is the Limois. So basically, they're saying that waves could come up into that area and create additional damage. So the coastal A area, which is anything in this Limois area, would have to be built to the V standard, even though they're in an A zone. And Kenneth is here if you have any additional questions as the floodplain manager that I can't answer, but I'm happy to try.
What's the zone on that map that we're talking about? The stuff that's outlined in black?
So so the Limois is this area that's got kind of a red, is that, and then our different zones would be, this is gonna be your VE, it's gonna be green, AE, and then so if you change it to preliminary, here is your flood zone, whether it is VE or AE, and then here is your base flood elevation. So like for me, my base flood elevation went up 2 feet, is the change. I'm in the same zone, however, I am no longer, I'm just a little bit higher. If you do not have a color, like these very lucky people here, you are so high on the top of the dune that you are not in a flood zone. And if you are in yellow, you are in the 0.2% annual chance of a flood hazard. So you're pretty much out of it, but they still put a color there.
So from that view, Amy, can you just toggle back to effective?
Yes, sir.
To show them kind of the changes.
So in this area, a little bit went out. Here, let me see if I can put one side by side. So on the right side is the preliminary map, and on the left side, or the left side of my screen, is the effective map. So what you'll see is that this area of Limois was not on there before. So there's some changes where VE, these houses here are no longer in VE. They are now in AE. So those are kind of some of the changes just looking at it. So some went out of VE and went into AE, and some went into VE that weren't in VE before or became coastal.
Be less risk.
VE is very expensive. It's got, it's
It's wave, it's
yes,
velocity, so that means that there is a chance for wave action to impact the structure.
That's good for them, they move to the AE.
For
Yes.
for
Insurance
insurance
purposes,
purposes,
yes.
yeah.
Any further questions for Amy? I mean, this is something that no matter what, it has to be done.
Yeah, we gotta,
Yeah.
we're gonna pass that.
Yeah.
But I will know, the things that the town does have choices upon would be the participation in CRS, which I'm not advocating we don't participate in CRS. CRS is the community rating system, and it acknowledges and rewards communities for going above and beyond the minimum standards. And how that reward is generated is through a percentage reduction on flood insurance rates. So that is a cost savings that goes back to the residents of Surf City if we implement higher standards than what are current. So I want to make sure that you guys understand this. The CRS is a voluntary participation. However, it is something that we have been working to achieve over the
For a while
last
now.
couple of years. Yeah.
So this gets us one step closer. So we can do the 2 foot above base flood elevation to be a part of that program, or we can choose to continue as we are. Just everything has to be above base flood elevation. We have been trying to get in the CRS program. That was one of the last couple of things that we needed to do. So we have it in this ordinance. Again, like Hal said, if that's not something that we want to continue, then we can certainly make that change in the proposed ordinance update.
Staff's recommendation to move forward with what they call freeboard of 2 feet.
Yes, sir.
Consensus or motion?
Consensus? Consensus.
Yes.
Okay, we got a full consensus.
Bye, Amy. See you.
It's good seeing y'all. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your lunch.
All right, well, Sandy, Michael, and Jerry have been waiting very patiently to come up
I
and
wanna be one
present
of
the
those ones that
Surfboard
sleeps
Art
at a time.
Program.
And surfing all
First, I
morning.
want to say thank you so much for having us. We were very excited to talk to you today about Surfing in the City, a public art installation project. I know you have this in front of you, and I'm trying to do this.
Okay, so Surfing in the City is our newest project that we're going to be doing. We're not going to be doing a mural this year, but we're going to replace it with this for the time being. The objective of this program is to showcase our town as a continued supporter of public art, enhance art and the culture in our area, and boost economic growth and tourism. So what it is actually 64-inch surfboards, and you can see kind of an example. That one's a little bit taller, but this is an example to keep in mind as we go through this.
Would you bring that up here, seriously, so we can see it?
Please.
Please, please, please.
They are going to be painted and adorned by local artists here in our area, which businesses and sponsors, businesses and individuals can sponsor these boards around town. It'll increase the foot traffic to the sponsor's business and around town. It's going to create a sense of fun and exploration and bring more awareness to our town as well.
So here we just have a couple of examples of other programs like this in other communities. We did a lot of research into probably 6 or 8 at least communities that did similar projects. So we have the Newbern Bears, Galax has the their bass fiddles, I believe, and Galveston, Texas does some turtles. We also had Carolina Beach is starting a project with Venus flytraps. Modesto, South Carolina does a turtle project, and there's another, Hendersonville, I believe, also does a similar bear project. Most of these communities do these as a tourism project, they're handled through the CVB or through the chamber perhaps, or they're done as a fundraiser, maybe like the Karen Beasley Sea Turtle Hospital did maybe 7, 8 years ago. They did something similar to raise funds. Ours would be managed through the town. It would be sponsorship-based, and the town would maintain most of those throughout the process, but they would be sponsored by area businesses, or as Michael said, individuals could do them as a memorial project.
So the benefits of sponsorship. So several things that we're going to do as a committee. We're going to provide a tourism guide or map that's going to be developed and published for the surfboards and their locations. We'll include our murals in that as well. But this will be available for people to download. We're also going to put information about the sponsors on our Town of Surf City web pages, as well as the social media outlets. You'll also, as a sponsor, get recognition at a town council meeting. But most importantly for our sponsors, it's just going to give your business a sense of pride in that you're helping to develop and make our little community a lot prettier and more appealing to the public. So it's more of a pride type of thing for our businesses. And Sandy will show you a sample of that brochure.
There we go. So, sorry. So here are just a couple examples of similar brochures, and we would look to create a piece like this that can be done in print and updated yearly or something like that, but always keep updated online so that someone could say they want to do a scavenger hunt and find all the surfboards around the community. That would expose them to all the plaques that we'll have on each surfboard that talks about the sponsor and the artist and things like that. So we hope to really support these through printed materials or online materials, and that's something that we want to work on over the next few months is getting, we've already started working with Kyle, getting a website presence on the town's website, and then have the chamber linked to that, and some other organizations that, you know, want to promote art. The Arts Council, places like that would link to that to get people out walking around looking for these boards. Here's another example of it.
Yeah, the one in Newburgh. By the way, Newburgh now has 100 bears in and around their town. So, and in talking with them, this actually, they just kind of started this as right off I mean, they had no plans in place and just started it.
How long has New Bern been doing it?
I can't read that.
I know, I'm just strictly going to guess here, but it's easily been probably about 5 to 10 years, and I would say more towards it.
And they have 100 bears in that amount of time.
Maybe actually, that's probably pushing it a little bit.
80 bears.
We'll round it to 8.
It's been incredibly successful there. In fact, on all of these locations, and we've looked through, gosh, I can't tell you how many locations across the country, and mainly on the coastal areas, it's been tremendously successful everywhere that we have looked. Are we ready to go into the cost?
And I'll just add that there was a big blend of, you know, town square type locations as well as in front of people's businesses. So it was a real mix of where people had their statues displayed.
So obviously there is a cost in this. And we have looked, again, with all of these locations, and these projects have typically cost anywhere from about $3,000 to $5,000 for sponsors to do. Some even more so than that. But in ours, you know, we've gone back and forth through different vendors, and gosh knows I can't tell you how many that we've been through, to determine the best vendor, most reliable vendor, and we think that we've come up with that. So basically, our sponsorship cost is going to be $2,500 for a business or for an individual. So the great thing about this, let me backtrack one quick second. So what we have to do through Icon Poly, which is the group that we're going to be using, is we have to have them create a mold. Ours, like we said, is going to be 64 inches, so it's going to be slightly shorter than this particular board, which I believe is 6'2". And that's going to cost us one time approximately $5,200. That will be coming out of our committee budget. After that, there's just going to be the cost of the individual boards, which sponsorships will take care of. So as far as our cost,
It's a cost neutral.
it's going to be a kind of a cost neutral going forward, which is a great benefit for us. So now we can have art without cost so much. So like I said, $2,500. This is going to include everything. We have a base that that's not included here, but I think Sandy will show you in just a second. That will be at the bottom, and part of our cost includes them producing that base along with the surfboard. So
It would
they're
be
gonna
all
provide
part of the
everything
same
that we
mold,
need.
yeah.
Right, on that.
Done with that?
Oh, one quick thing too. So on damages, we tend to have some wind around here. But so damages to these, if they're placed in a public spot, the town of Surf City or our committee will take care of getting that repaired or replaced. If a business decides to put it out front of their business, they will be responsible for the cost to repair or replace. Hopefully, that's not going to be much of a factor, but that's just how it's going to be drawn up.
So here's just a mock-up. This is what we sent to Icon Poly as well as a few other companies that we talked to about producing this for us. So in essence, it will be the board stuck within a wave-type looking base, and then the whole surface, the whole front, back, sides, and the wave and everything is what would be created by the artist, what would be painted by the artist. So it could be very unique. Wave doesn't have to look exactly like a wave. It could have fish in there. It could have a mermaid in it. I mean, who knows? Whatever the sponsor wanted to do. So we're hoping they become super unique, just like this one's very unique. We're giving them free reign. The basic, like Michael said, about 64 inches, about 30 inches wide at the base, maybe around 80 pounds. And they'll be mounted by an aluminum bracket in the base, and I'm going to have Jerry talk about that because he's our expert engineer, installation person. He and Chris both, they understand all this a lot better. Our only thing that we need to really verify is how much wind they can withstand. We're guessing about 40 miles an hour or something like that before they'd have to be removed, but we do not know that until we experience that. But the idea is that the way they will be mounted, it could be removed and brought inside if we have a horrible windstorm. So I'm going to show you this, and so I don't know, Jerry, if you want to
Jerry,
talk
you
about
wanna-
that, I'll hold this for you.
So the statue will come with these brackets already made into the bottom of the statue. Once we know the actual size of the base, then we can figure the concrete base that we need for that. And what we're using is what they call a true bolt. And there's certain parameters for that. You gotta keep them certain distance from edges. So once we know the exact size of the base of the statue, then we can decide the base that we need to hold the statue.
So the statue would be unbolted from the base, bring it inside.
Yes.
And we're
These-
talking cement, like poured cement,
Right.
right, Chris? Poured cement in the ground, and this would be attached to it.
We want to protect them from wind, obviously storms and wind, and also theft.
Here's some details. This
Shocker
is-
system on mine. Because to steal it.
This is a lot of details. You all had this in your packet, and ask any questions that you like. But the basics are that this would be a Town of Surf City owned piece of art. The committee will will arrange the purchase on behalf of the sponsor. There will be a sponsor agreement, an artist agreement, and we'll be working with Kyle on getting every little detail of that acceptable to the Town of Surf City. The sculpture may not be used as a commercial or political advertisement for the sponsor. No logos will be allowed or political symbols, etc., similar to the rules we had for the mural. There will be a plaque that will name the sponsor or the memorial if it's dedicated to someone, and it will name the artwork itself and the artist. It will need to be approved by the committee prior to having work begin. Sponsorship does not constitute ownership. The town of Surf City remains the owner. The sponsorship should last about 3 years, and we chose that time frame because we're kind of guessing on how long the art will remain beautiful. So we don't want to have a bunch of things out there that are nicked and damaged and so forth. So after that, if you want to renew the sponsorship, there would be an additional cost, and all of that covers is having the board repainted and touched up. So then that would last another 3 years. If we find at 3 years it looks perfect, then we won't need to do that, but that's what we want to set up initially.
I have a question. Okay, so Jeremy sponsors one. He puts out in front of his business, and the storm's coming. What's that?
Wind, Jeremy.
Weather comes, we have to take it inside. So Chris's guys disconnect it.
So
and
what
it's stored inside Jeremy's place, or it's stored somewhere for the town?
What we're proposing is that any statues that are on town public property, then our committee in the town will work together to remove those and store them wherever Chris tells us we can store them. And if you choose to display your statue on your private business property, you will be signing in your agreement that you are responsible for removing that and taking it into a safe location. And
I just thought it would be...
That eliminates town's liability for going on private property.
Well, yeah, not only that, but I'm just thinking about storage, you know?
That'll be up to them
If
to
it's stored
ensure the
inside his
safety.
place, he's got his hands on it, and if Chris has to find a place to store 40 of these things, it's going to be... Now,
So-
let me ask you this, too. Okay, so he sponsors it for 3 years, and he decides for some reason he's not going to sponsor it anymore. That goes to somebody else?
Correct.
But
So
what
if-
about the base that's set in concrete?
The concrete base would stay there if they had that on their property. I suppose they could dig it up if they like. I don't know. That would be a detail.
Yeah,
we
okay.
need to
I'm
figure out.
just,
But,
you know, I mean,
but
if-
the
if-
statue itself
with the
would be
through
removed.
bolts, you could probably unbolt it and just, you'd have concrete there, but you take the base away.
Correct. We'll sprinkle a little mulch over it, put a flower pot.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, roll out some little sod or something. Let's see.
Before we go further, okay, one more, and that's it, I promise. The base, okay, the wave, what is that made out of?
It's all the same thing. It'll be all one composite piece. It won't be
when you
separate.
when you take the actual board up, that base comes with it,
Yeah, it'll all be one big piece.
and it's about 80 pounds.
That's what we were told. No, obviously, we don't have one
Well, yeah,
here
but I
yet,
mean-
so that was the estimate that they gave us.
Okay.
So that should be reasonable for 1 to 2 people to
Yeah, sure.
take that up. The other part is that the sponsor agrees to display it in a publicly visible outdoor location. The idea behind these is they will be outdoor public art, so we don't want a business choosing to try to put it inside their business. And I think that about covers it. I mean, there's a few more details in there, but if you have questions about any of that, I'd be happy to answer them. And then we'll just breeze through these real quick. The idea is that when we talk about public art locations, we're hoping to place them inside some of the public parks that we have around town. The Nova Elberry Park, maybe out at the new park, something here at Town Hall. The Welcome Center, perhaps a boat launch.
Sandy, those can go on the multi-use path too, right? Those
And-
could possibly go on the, yeah.
And then
Okay.
going forward, when it's available to start placing things there, definitely on the multi-use path.
And that will be up to, once a business sponsors that, they will have a choice of where they would like to place it. And hopefully, we'll have a little bit of both, where we have some that place it at their business and some that want to.
And you'll work those details out with Chris and Kyle, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, got it, okay.
Oops.
Sorry, Mike.
Oh, did I do something?
So I think the next slide was going to be the.
Help me.
Okay, that's
There we
okay. So, as we mentioned earlier, we do already have an artist. that's available. She did this work. She specializes in surfboards. She's got several other examples. And on our site, or when we locate, the business can locate some examples, you see 6 here, but we have probably, another dozen
Yeah.
that she has done. And for the business, they can choose to use one of these if they like, but they'll also have the opportunity to create their own board. They can even use their own artist as long as they conform to the guidelines that we give. And most of our guidelines are from Icon Poly and how, as far as the clear coats and things like that, they must be conformed to that. Let's see. Am I missing anything else? So once a sponsor agrees to sponsor a board, they would simply sit down with the artist, go over. She would present the concept for their approval. It has to also meet our approval because there are certain limitations, as Sandy mentioned. And then we will place it where they want as long as it's approved. And it's going to be a pretty simple process. I think it'll be very, very successful for us.
So really today, we want to answer any of your questions. We want to get your overall approval for the project in general. And some of these, the reason why we're really pushing for this is we'd like to begin asking for sponsorships as early as November. And in order to do that, it takes time for us to create some marketing and sales materials, to get a web page up, to get, emails pulled together and things like that. So that's why we're here today. And so if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, and by the way, the mold, one reason why we want to get moving
yes.
forward is the mold is going to take about 12 to 20 weeks for us to get it back.
Is that will involve
Hopefully,
the-
that's a little overstated,
Yeah.
but.
So it involves the
it's-
process of them
Right.
sending us the artistic rendering and so forth, and then creating the mold. And then after that, Jerry, was it like 6 to 12 weeks to create the board itself? So in order to even get this moving to start in the spring, we need to, get on the ground running now.
How many boards, I know I wouldn't ask any questions, but how many boards are you figuring on ordering first off?
Well, I know that we will get a discount on shipping because shipping is high if you just order one by itself. So if we order, 2 to 3 up front, 3 to 4 up front, we'll get a break on the shipping, and we're hoping we can get some pre-sale right away so we can go ahead and get that going and then, work on the art afterwards.
We have to be careful, John, with our budget.
Absolutely.
Because even though we'll be getting this money back, we have to
Okay.
pay initially.
Kyle kind of said it wasn't guaranteed it stays in our budget, so if we spend it.
We have to watch Kyle manipulate.
Question for Chris. Chris, come up with the mic. So you obviously oversee this committee. This is kind of your. Do you like the concept? What's your take on your opinion of all this?
I like it. I mean, I think it would fit in with the town really good, so I think we
Because
get some.
all this creates a little bit more work for you, and I want to make sure that you're good with this process too.
I've got a good committee here, so as soon as I give them a call and say we got to go pull them out, I know they'll be here to help out.
So we're looking for an approval to, a
Yeah,
motion
so
to
just-
approve this?
Today, we're just looking for a
Concept
consensus.
approval, yeah.
We're not voting today. It would just be a consensus and come on the council, on the council meeting. As far as my only concern would just to make sure, how we're trying to make sure things stay out of the right of way for David Price with his water and sewer, just to make sure that if they are like dug in the ground, make sure that they're not in our water or sewer lines to affect those in any manner.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So consensus.
Yes.
I'm good. I think it's great. It's
All
awesome.
right, we have consensus. Thank you, guys. Great job. Look forward to it.
Great job again, Sandy and the team.
All right, we'll rub it in.
All right.
wants to leave. She's like,
Item
we're at the
number
end.
10, skate park ordinance, and Jody Shepherd will present.
All right, good morning. So this morning I have brought before you requesting council consent for the skate park ordinance. We are in the final stages of park construction of the recreational complex for Phase 1, and the skate park being a part of that. We need to do our due diligence so that way we can be ready to open the skate park when the complex opens. So what you have before you is some changes to the ordinance to reflect the Earl G. Inez Batts Recreation Complex. Noting it, as well as you will see the update that includes the skate park facilities being added, what it's designated for, the hazardous recreational activity that it can be, the skate park sign posting, the administration with the violations, and then stating all of the rules that will be stated within the skate park. It is noting unsupervised skate park. The hours that the skate park is permitted for skating activities are reflected within our ordinances that are currently in place for our park facilities. It's stating skateboards, skaters, and bicyclists on the skating surfaces. No one under the age of 12 shall be allowed in the park unless under direct supervision of parents or a legal guardian, as well as several other rules and regulations that follow our current park rules and regulations that we have in place. All of this was done under the administration of town administration, legal guidance, as well as our risk management within the League of Municipalities. Also researching and speaking with other municipal governments that are close by, as well as within several hours within North Carolina that have skate parks in place that are concrete skate parks, and the recommendations that have been given to them, as well as the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee with any questions or concerns that they might have on their part. So I have, if anyone
anyone have any questions for Jody concerning the skate park ordinance?
Nope.
Good.
We're good.
Looking for a consensus?
Yes.
Here to move?
Fine.
I like it.
Everybody say yes?
Yes.
All right. Jody, you also have item number 12, Parks, Recreation, Tourism, Sole Source, Global Industries.
Yes, ma'am. So I come before you this morning requesting a consensus for the continuity of services, and that's for our tri-level water fountains that have the bottle filler, the pet fountain, and all of this is done through Global Industries. I have brought some other things before the board in the past. We are stressing for the same thing, the continuity of services for this style product that we already have in the use of our facilities.
Any questions concerning the sole source request? And you're just looking for a consensus here?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have consensus to move forward?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, we have complete consensus. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to say for the betterment of this meeting? No? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned.